October 25, 1944, 6:00 a.m. over Leyte Gulf, Philippines. The sky is darkening with dawn, but already it hums with engines. Dozens of Mitsubishi A6M0 fighters line up on the tarmac of the Japanese airfield. Pilots adjust their goggles and tighten straps across their chests. Every man knows today's mission has only one outcome. They will not return. Lieutenant Kiyoshi Agawa walks past the rows of aircraft, helmet under his arm, clutching a photograph of his family. His eyes flicker over the ocean beyond the runway, and for a moment the Pacific seems endless. You can almost feel the salty wind biting at his face. Nearby, ground crew men finish last-minute checks. Explosives are loaded, fuel tanks filled to capacity, wings polished to a deadly sheen. The hum of engines grows louder, an ominous symphony of impending destruction. On board the first plane, Agawa thinks not of survival. There is no strategy for coming home. Instead, there is honor. There is duty. There is a promise that this flight will protect the Emperor, even if it costs him everything. The takeoff is immediate. Tires screech against the runway. The planes rise into the early morning mist. Below, Allied ships are still asleep, unaware of what approaches. Above, the pilots climb, hearts pounding, eyes scanning for anti-aircraft fire, but there is no hesitation, only focus. For the Americans on the USS St. Lo, the first alarm sounds too late. Radar catches faint blips, but by the time lookouts see the streaking zeros, the bombs and planes are already upon them. Smoke rises from gun decks as sailors scramble. The chaos is instantaneous, brutal, and shocking. Agawa dives his plane, nose aimed at the carrier deck. He releases his final bomb, a direct hit, before the Zero crashes into the hull. Fire erupts across the deck. Smoke and explosions mingle with screams. This is no longer a battle. It is a living sacrifice, a human missile guided by honor and desperation. The Americans scramble to comprehend what just happened. How could men willingly fly to their deaths? Each attack is precise, fearless, and devastating. Leyte Gulf will see dozens more like Agawa that morning. And with each one, the Allies realize something terrifying. This is not just combat. This is a new kind of war. Even as the smoke clears, the pilots' bodies vanish into the sea. Their aircraft wreckage burns and sinks. Yet their names, their courage, and their sacrifice leave an imprint far larger than any single explosion. The Pacific War will never be the same. Behind the guns and the fires, planners in Tokyo watch eagerly. They see results, losses inflicted, fear instilled, and a grim calculation begins. Perhaps death can be weaponized more than ever. Perhaps ordinary men can become guided missiles, carrying not just bombs but ideology and despair. And so the world asks the question it cannot yet answer. What drives a man to embrace certain death, and how will this change the war forever? November 1944, Amura Air Base, Japan. The morning fog hangs low over the airfield, curling around the rows of Mitsubishi Zeros like ghostly fingers. Inside the barracks, young men, barely 20, wake to the sound of clanging metal and shouted commands. Sweat already drips down their temples, though the sun has not yet risen. Today, they will learn not just to fly, but to die on command. Flight Instructor Commander Masaharu Okamura paces the hangar, his gaze sharp. He stops in front of a trembling recruit, placing a firm hand on the young man's shoulder. "You must understand," he says, voice low but intense. "Your life is not yours. It belongs to the Emperor, to the nation. When you leave this ground, you will give everything without hesitation." Recruits are guided through simulations. Aircraft are stripped to bare essentials. Bombs are strapped to fuselages with meticulous precision. Navigation exercises are no longer about survival, they are about ensuring impact accuracy. Every maneuver is rehearsed, every dive calculated. Mistakes are fatal. In the mess hall, letters from families are pinned to the walls. Mothers, words of pride; fathers, warnings; sisters, prayers. They are read aloud and then burned ceremonially. The ritual serves a dual purpose: to honor the past and to sever emotional ties to the future. You can almost feel the weight pressing down on these boys, their hearts heavy with knowledge they cannot share. Outside, instructors demonstrate a final dive, nose pointed downward toward the sea. Engines roar, wings tilt, and men are trained to commit without faltering. The sound of wind rushing past is deafening, a brutal accompaniment to the screams that echo in their minds. This is no longer a flight lesson, it is a preparation for obliteration. Meanwhile, Japan's high command watches training reports with grim satisfaction. Each man who completes the program is no longer a soldier, he is a living weapon. And as Allied fleets gather in the Pacific, the Japanese calculate that fear can be as deadly as firepower. At night under lantern light, some trainees write last letters or paint final goodbyes in small notebooks. Few speak. Silence pervades the barracks. Outside, the airfield is still, but inside, the tension is suffocating. The boys are being transformed, not into warriors, but into instruments of inevitable death. And yet, in these moments of quiet, doubts linger. A whispered question: is honor worth this price? Most keep the thought buried. To consider otherwise would be unthinkable, dishonorable, impossible. In the Pacific, the Allies sense something is changing. Air attacks are met with unpredictable, suicidal dives. Ships, once confident in their anti-aircraft defense, now face a terrifying calculus. A man is flying at them with no intention of surviving. Fear spreads faster than any bullet. And somewhere in Tokyo, planners note the psychological impact. Ordinary men, trained to die, have become the deadliest tool in Japan's arsenal. The war is no longer just about strategy. It is about the human mind itself. October 25, 1944, Leyte Gulf, Philippines, dawn. The horizon burns with the first light of day, but for the sailors aboard the USS St. Lo, there is no hope in sunrise, only dread. Lookouts strain their eyes through binoculars. Out of the mist, black silhouettes appear on the horizon. Mitsubishi Zeros, engines screaming, wings glinting in the weak morning light. Lieutenant Kiyoshi Agawa leads the first wave. His hands are steady on the controls, his eyes locked on the massive aircraft carrier below. Every muscle is tense, every thought is disciplined. Death is certain. Fear is irrelevant. All that matters is hitting the target. Below, American gunners scramble. Shells streak into the sky, but too late. One by one, the Zeros drop bombs. Then the pilots dive, planes becoming living torpedoes aimed at decks and funnels. Explosions erupt with shattering force. Men are thrown into the air. Fire and smoke engulf the flight deck. Chaos reigns. In the middle of the turmoil, Agawa's plane locks onto the carrier. He releases his payload and pushes the throttle forward, nose tilting downward. The deck disappears beneath him. Moments later, the plane slams into the ship, a human missile guided by precision and unwavering resolve. Fire blooms instantly, devouring wood and steel alike. Onboard, sailors barely have time to react. Some pray. Others fight back with machine guns, but against men trained to die, even bullets cannot deter determination. Screams echo over the water. Smoke drifts across the sea. And in the midst of destruction, the Americans realize this is no ordinary attack. More Zeros appear, each following the same lethal pattern. By mid-morning, the fleet suffers heavy damage. Ships sink, fires rage uncontrollably, and morale trembles under a new kind of fear. The realization that an enemy willing to die can never be bargained with. From the Japanese command perspective, the operation is a success. Each successful strike costs a life, yes, but the psychological damage inflicted on the Allies is immeasurable. Plans are adjusted, routes changed, and caution replaces confidence. In the minds of Tokyo strategists, the calculation is clear. The kamikaze is not just a weapon, it is a force multiplier, turning courage into carnage. And yet, even among these young men, tension simmers. Some feel the instinct to survive, to swerve, to hesitate. But the weight of honor, the eyes of instructors, and the emperor leave no room for doubt. The human body is pushed to extremes, guided by ideology, fear, and the unbreakable code of Bushido. By nightfall, Leyte Gulf is transformed. Smoke hangs over sinking ships, water glimmers with firelight, and the sea carries the remnants of human courage and destruction alike. The Kamikaze pilots have carved a new chapter in warfare, one where death itself becomes strategy, and survival is the exception, not the rule. The Allies begin to understand. This war has entered a terrifying new phase, one where every approaching plane could be a man flying deliberately into death and into them. November 1944, Amura Air Base, Japan, night. The airfield is quiet now, but inside the barracks, the weight of the day lingers. Young pilots sit in shadowed corners, helmets removed, faces pale and eyes hollow. Some trace the outlines of family photos pressed in their pockets. Others write letters they will never send, folding each carefully, knowing the words may never reach loved ones. Lieutenant Seiji Oka, barely 19, stares at the ceiling. His mind replays the morning's mission, the way the deck of the USS St. Lo had erupted in flame, the cries, the smoke. He knows he could be next. The instructors have drilled him relentlessly, precision, courage, devotion. Yet beneath the training a question gnaws quietly, am I ready to die? In the mess hall, murmurs ripple through the group. Some speak of patriotism, of protecting the emperor, of honor in death. Others whisper quietly of fear, homesickness, regret. It is a delicate tension, a balance between ideology and instinct, between obedience and humanity. You can almost feel the suffocating pressure in the room, the way hope and dread coexist like fragile ghosts. Meanwhile, Japan's leadership reviews the damage reports. For every success, a young life has vanished. Each plane that hit its target is paired with one that will never return. Strategically, the attacks are effective. Psychologically, they terrify the Allies. Yet the moral cost grows heavier with each mission. These are not machines. These are men, boys really, sacrificed for a national strategy that leaves no margin for mercy. Outside the barracks, the Pacific wind carries the distant thunder of Allied naval artillery, a reminder that the war marches on relentlessly. Some trainees lie awake, imagining the endless sky over the ocean, imagining the moment of dive, the explosion, the instant when life ends and only duty remains. Their hearts pound in rhythm with engines that will one day take them to certain death. Letters smuggled from pilots' families offer both comfort and torment. Words of pride, blessings, prayers for courage, they are read and reread, then folded into envelopes with trembling hands, left on desks, never to be mailed. In these moments, the raw human cost of the Kamikaze program becomes painfully clear. Every successful strike, every strategic victory is measured in lives never meant to return. Even among instructors and commanders, a silent understanding grows. The pilot's courage is unmatched, but it is built on something far darker than bravery. It is built on the absolute removal of choice, on the erasure of instinct, on the expectation that devotion to a cause outweighs the innate human will to survive. And as the night stretches over Amura, the young men sleep fitfully, dreams haunted by skis filled with fire, by ships exploding, by the ocean waiting below, a final, cold embrace. Each knows that tomorrow will demand the same resolve. Each knows that someday their turn will come, and the world will remember only the destruction, not the boy who flew into it. The Kamikaze mission, Japan's ultimate weapon, is not just measured in explosions or strategy. It is measured in the human soul. And as the Pacific War rages, the true cost of this weapon is only beginning to be understood. December 1944, USS Ticonderoga, Philippine Sea, dawn. The morning mist hangs low over the deck, dew mixing with the salty spray of the ocean. Sailors peer anxiously into the horizon, scanning for the first hint of approaching aircraft. The calm is deceptive. Every man knows the threat is invisible until it's almost too late. Radar operators report faint blips in the distance. The ship's captain, Commander James D.P. Lee, narrows his eyes, understanding immediately. Kamikaze planes are inbound. Orders bark across the deck. Gunners scramble to positions. Anti-aircraft batteries roar to life, firing into the mist. The sound is deafening, echoing across the waves. Suddenly, silhouettes emerge. Mitsubishi Zeros dive from the clouds, engines screaming, wings slicing through the pale light. Some planes are already damaged from Allied fire, but their pilots do not falter. Their dive is unrelenting, their focus absolute. You can almost feel the air shake with their speed, the tension thick enough to choke. The first plane slams into the flight deck. Fire erupts instantly. Explosions ripple across the ship. Sailors are thrown off their feet, shouts and screams blending with the roar of flames. Panic and discipline collide. Some men run for cover, others continue to fire, determined to protect their ship. For the Japanese command watching from afar, the impact is twofold. Ships are damaged, sure, but even more potent is the psychological effect. The Allies are unnerved, forced to adjust tactics, to add layers of defense. Confidence wavers. Fear begins to dictate movements as much as strategy. On the flight decks, Lieutenant Tadahiko Murata guides his plane through anti-aircraft fire, eyes fixed on the target. He knows that survival is impossible. He does not hesitate. In this single dive, he embodies the kamikaze doctrine, devotion over instinct, honor over life. The plane crashes, explosions consume it, and Murata is gone. The Allies begin recalculating. Every incoming plane is now a potential human missile. Pilots learn to evade, ships adjust course constantly, radar networks expand. Kamikaze attacks are not just destructive, they reshape the very strategy of naval warfare. Back on Japanese soil, young men continue to train, the cycle relentless. Each success is hailed as heroic. Each loss is quietly mourned but recorded as necessary. The human cost remains staggering, but the doctrine is clear. Fear can be weaponized, and in the Pacific, it is doing so with devastating effect. By nightfall, the sea is littered with wreckage. Fires burn across decks, smoke drifts over the water, and the survivors sit in stunned silence. Somewhere, the pilots' families sleep, unaware of whether their sons survived the day. And in this silence, the Pacific War feels larger, deadlier, and more unpredictable than ever before. The kamikaze pilots have not just struck ships, they have struck at the mind of the Allied forces, forcing them to fight differently, think differently, fear differently. And the question that lingers above the smoke is chilling. How many more lives must be risked before this new form of war reaches its breaking point? April 1st, 1945. Okinawa, Japan, dawn. The island's jagged cliffs and sandy beaches glimmer faintly under the rising sun, but the calm is a cruel illusion. American battleships and cruisers hover offshore, while Japanese forces dig in, bracing for the inevitable. In the air, Mitsubishi Zeros and Yokosuka D4Y dive bombers line up, ready for one of the largest kamikaze operations yet. Lieutenant Shigenaka grips his controls, knuckles white, as the ground crew straps explosives beneath his plane. His eyes flick to the photograph tucked in his pocket, a picture of his younger sister, smiling, unaware that he will never return. The air is thick with salt, smoke from previous raids, and the unmistakable metallic tang of aviation fuel. As the first wave launches, sailors aboard the USS Enterprise scramble, shouting over the roar of engines and gunfire. Anti-aircraft guns blaze, tracer rounds slicing the dawn. Still, some planes break through, diving with terrifying precision. One hits a destroyer's deck, flames erupting, sailors flung in every direction. The destruction is immediate, relentless, and shocking. In the control tower back at the Japanese airfield, commanders record every success with grim satisfaction. Every ship damaged, every crew member killed, every tactic the Allies must change. these are measured as victories. But beneath the calculations, a subtle dread grows. Each mission costs young men trained to die. Each attack is a moment closer to exhaustion, desperation, and the limits of human endurance. Naka's plane dives toward a battleship. He can see men running, firing, scrambling for cover. In his cockpit, time slows. Memories of home, fleeting thoughts of survival flicker but are crushed under the weight of duty. He releases the bomb, a direct hit. Flames bloom across the deck. And then, as the aircraft plummets into the sea, Naka's life ends with terrifying clarity. The ultimate sacrifice has been made. On the water, survivors witness the new reality of war. Kamikaze pilots are not just fighters, they are symbols of inevitability, men who remove the possibility of mercy from battle. Fear becomes a tangible weapon, influencing strategy, morale, and every subsequent engagement. Back on Okinawa, new recruits arrive, faces pale and determined. The cycle continues, training, launching, sacrificing. Each wave tests the limits of human courage, the strength of ideology, and the capacity of a nation to endure loss. For Japan, the Kamikaze program is not just military, it is existential, a desperate bid to turn the tide with lives as ammunition. By nightfall, Okinawa's beaches are littered with wreckage and ash. Ships smolder offshore. Survivors count the cost. And yet, the operation achieves its intended effect. Allied forces hesitate, fear spreads, and the Pacific theater has entered a stage where the line between bravery and futility blurs. The world begins to realize something profound and terrifying. Kamikaze pilots did not just attack ships, they redefined the meaning of sacrifice, courage, and the human cost of war. August 15, 1945, Japan mourning. The war is over. The emperor's voice, calm and unwavering, reaches millions across the nation via radio. Yet the echoes of the kamikaze missions linger, carried in the hearts of families, in the memories of survivors, and in the ruins of the Pacific. Streets are quiet, but the weight of loss hangs heavy in every home. In a small Tokyo apartment, the mother of Lieutenant Kiyoshi Agawa sits by a window, hands folded over a faded photograph. Her son never returned from Leyte Gulf, yet his face is etched into her memory, a mixture of pride and unbearable grief. Across the country, thousands share the same experience. Sons, brothers, and husbands lost in missions that were both heroic and tragic. Historians study the Pacific battles, but numbers fail to capture the essence of what kamikaze pilots achieved and what they cost. Allied losses were real and strategic, but the true story lies in the human psyche. The terror, the discipline, the ideology that transformed ordinary boys into living missiles. Every dive, every explosion, reshaped how war was fought, forcing the Allies to rethink tactics, strategy, and risk. In the decades that follow, Japan rebuilds itself. Memorials are raised, and survivors speak of courage, fear, and the haunting weight of duty. Children learn the history of kamikaze pilots, not just as instruments of destruction, but as symbols of a nation's desperation, and of the extreme choices imposed by ideology and war. Across the world, military analysts dissect kamikaze tactics. They understand the psychology of a man willing to die for a cause. Naval strategies are rewritten. Aircraft defenses improved. Lessons are learned, sometimes at the cost of countless lives. The legacy of kamikaze pilots becomes a cautionary tale of honor, sacrifice, and the limits of human endurance. And yet, beyond strategy and history books, the human story remains. Young men who flew into the sky knowing death awaited, left behind families, memories, and questions that history cannot fully answer. Why did they choose duty over survival? How could ideology compel a boy to embrace annihilation? These questions echo in every memorial, every photograph, every whispered story of the Pacific War. Kamikaze pilots changed WWII not just by sinking ships or disrupting operations. They changed the way humanity perceives courage, sacrifice, and the terrible cost of devotion. Their missions are immortalized in memory and legend, a haunting reminder that war is shaped as much by the human spirit as by weapons. And as the sun rises over modern Japan, the shadow of their sacrifice remains. Silent, somber, unforgettable. The kamikaze pilots are gone, but the war and the world, influenced, will never forget them.